it's time for Land Matters with Gloria Brown, attorney Gloria Brown. Land Matters is brought to you by the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited.
Heavenly Father, stretch forth your mighty hand.
It's always good to have you, Mrs. Brown, attorney Brown. Good evening. It's over to you.
Good evening, and thank you so much. Good evening, listeners. Welcome again to Land Matters, aired every Tuesday at 7:30 on Called Out Gospel Radio. And we invite you to tune in, send us your questions, your queries, any issue you have in relation to land. You may just send me a WhatsApp message, 876-387-3183, 876-387-3183. And please remind you that Called Out Gospel Radio is located in Ocho St. Anne. And I will encourage you to tune into this radio station, which can really bless your mind, body, and spirit. So, land matters. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about buying property. And whatever I say about buying, most of it will apply to selling as well. So you can always use the reverse. So you say, I want to buy a piece of property. I'm getting big now. I can't stay under mama's and dada's roof all the while. I need to get something for myself. So you start seeking. You need to determine some things before you seek. How much can you afford to pay for the land? So you might have to go to a mortgage company if you don't have the cash and see how much you qualify for. You might have to probably see to NHT and see how much would they be willing to lend you just to buy land. Or maybe it's a house you want to buy, so you find out how much they'll be able to lend you to buy a house. Because you don't want to go looking for a $10 million house when you are only qualified for 5 and you don't have any in the bank. You don't have much in the bank. So you determine how much can you afford to pay. Of equal importance as well is, where do you want to buy the property? Where do you want the property to be located? You want to be located because you are from St. Anne, you want it in St. Anne so you can be near to the relatives. Or you are now working in Kingston, so you say, I need to buy something where I'm working, or in one of the tourist mecca, Ocho Rios, Mobe, Negril, and you say, boy, I'm paying too much rent or commuting too far. So you look at location. So you have looked at your price point and your location. You also need to determine now, who am I? Am I going to be joining with somebody to buy it? Am I going to be joining with my spouse? Or maybe with my relatives? My aunt says that she's not going to use her NHC benefit, but she's willing to assist me. She'll join with me in buying it. Am I going to put my aunt's name on the title, or am I going to put it on my name alone and let my aunt still help me to apply? A lot of things need to consider. Am I going to buy it with my spouse or whoever I'm buying, my aunt, my spouse, my sibling, my child? Are we going to be joint tenants or tenants in common? Joint tenant means if one dies, the others will get it or the other will get it. Tenants in common means each of us will have a separate, distinct share that we can will to whoever we want. So those are some of the things that you need to consider. And of course, one of the most crucial ones, as I said, is location, and it's going to be price. And of course, we know that both of those are related. Because when somebody asks how much for a piece of land, I say location, location, location. Because 1 acre of land in New Kingston might fetch you $1 billion. An acre of land out in some other in some other parish might just be for maybe $1 million. So it's our location. And a lot of things that will determine value. Things like how near the property is to resources, to water, to electricity, to schools, to town center, to developed areas. Because, for example, you buy an empty lot and let somebody come and build 2 houses both sides of you, and immediately the price of the lot has gone up. So those are some of the things that you consider. Another thing I always say to my clients, when you're buying, whether it's house or land, try to look at it when it is raining. Because I've seen situations since Melissa where persons have had to cancel agreements because springs, rivers have arisen, have just come up from underground in relation, on properties that persons were living on before, dry land before, rivers that were not that were not operating or were not in operation for years have just resurfaced. So that's another thing that persons have to look at. When persons are buying houses, for example, in developments, I always say to my clients, go to the area at night. Go to the area on a public holiday, on a weekend. Go and look if that's a place you really want to live, or when you go there at night, there's nowhere to park. When you go in, you can't even back out because there are 3, 4, 5 cars behind you because there's not enough parking. Or you reach home late and you have to be outside the gated community because all the spaces have been taken, all the parking spaces. You go there at night and you have to wear earplugs because the music is so loud, so much noise, so much chaos. So a lot of things that you need to consider. But again, even in considering all those things, I always say to my clients, especially the young ones, your first house is hardly going to be your dream house. So don't have the expectation too high to say that it needs to have, all kind of fancy additions and how many bathrooms, each bathroom to a bedroom, and the master bedroom must be a mile long. A lot of the expectations. I always say to my young clients, the first house is supposed to be the deposit for the dream house. So when you're ready to sell that first one, you should be able to make enough money off it. So you can use that as your deposit to pay when you're buying the other one. And don't just say you're going to own one house, especially if you have more, if you have a big family. Okay, try to have more than one. It's investment because maybe later in life when you retire, you can sell one and you have a few millions where you can go on the tours that you want to go, and you can help your community, you can help your church, you can help some of the young people in your family. So many other things you can do. So therefore, investment in land is one of the best investments. If you don't, suppose you say, boy, I really want to buy a piece of land, but I don't know what to do. There are realtors, real estate agents, and because you are the person buying, you don't have to pay the realtor. The sellers are the persons who pay the realtors. So you don't have to pay a realtor when the realtor, they have a whole list of all the properties that are on sale that persons have put in the database for them. And they will look at it. You say, okay, I want something in St. Mary nearer to Anota Bay. They will look and say, oh, I have found 3 properties near to there. Come next Tuesday. Can you meet me such and such a place? And let us go and look at the 3, and you look, and then you can put in an offer in a situation like that. So that's something that you can also consider using a realtor. I don't think too many persons are aware of the benefits of using a realtor, or persons hear about realtors and feel that, hey, that's a lot of expense. You might not have to pay the realtor. And I want to pause to thank JPS for sponsoring this feature, this program, Land Matters, is sponsored by the Jamaica Public Service Company. And we noticed that JPS have been saying that in terms of the restoration for Melissa, they are way over target, and most persons have had electricity restored. There are some persons in some really remote locations that they will be having some challenges because we know how the terrain can be and the damage that was done. But thanks to JPS for sponsoring the program, and we hope that all persons will eventually be able to get electricity before too long. So you have got your realtor, or you have identified the property. What do you do next? One thing you must not do not give your money to the seller. Do not give your money to the seller. Don't let somebody come and say, hey, we are selling, I have a piece of land, my father land is for sale and I wanted to buy it. No. It's going after you have identified the property, it is supposed to be a matter between lawyers. The seller's lawyer and your lawyer. So you have identified the piece of land and you come to me and say, Miss Brown, I've seen a piece of land in Westmoreland. John Brown is selling it. I'm interested. I'm going to say to you, please ask John Brown for his lawyer's particulars. And then I'm going to write to the lawyer to say, I represent Mary Stevens, and she's interested in buying a piece of property owned by John Brown in Savannah, Lamar, Westmoreland. And I am told that you represent John Brown. Could you, these are the particulars, and I will give them my client's name, address, occupation, TRN, And also, I will tell them how you're going to finance the transaction. I might say it's a cash sale if you're not going to borrow, or I might say you're going to pay a 10% deposit or a 5% deposit, and you're going to get the balance from JN and NHT, VM, etc. The credit union, anywhere you're going to be getting that money from. And note that when you're borrowing money these days, suppose, for example, you want to get your NHT benefit, but it's not enough. You can just go to one of the building societies or the banks. You don't have to go to NHT. They will get your money from NHT and just put everything in the one loan. But the NHT funds will be lent to you at the low NHT rate. So when I write the other lawyer now, the lawyer will send me an agreement for sale, and we will look at the terms in the agreement and determine whether or not, between lawyer to lawyer, we'll say, I might say to them, you're giving my client 90 days to complete the transaction, but she's getting a mortgage. And the mortgage process is slow, so I'm asking for 120 days. Or I might say to them that I don't like this clause that say you're going to, that the client must supply a letter of undertaking within 45 days. Can I have 60 days? So we will haggle a bit about the terms of the agreement until we can come to an agreement. And then when we are satisfied and I get the perfected agreement and the transfer, then I'll ask my client to come in to sign the agreement and to come with the deposit, whether it's 5% or it's 10%. And the process would have started. After the client comes in with the deposit and signs the documents, then I will send the deposit to the other lawyer. Note, the other lawyer, I will send the money to the other lawyer, as well as the signed documents that have been executed, properly signed up by my client or clients. Please remember, you may send me your text messages. If you have a question, you may send a message to 876-387-3183. 876-387-3183. Or if you may also send a Google message to, you may also send a WhatsApp message. You may also send an email to gloriae1@yahoo.com. gloriae1@yahoo.com, or you may give me a WhatsApp message at 876-387-3183. 876-387-3183. Any question you have that relates to any land matter, not just buying and selling of property. So we have signed the agreement and we have sent off the documents to the other lawyer. I'm waiting on the other lawyer now to get their client, as a lawyer for the seller, to get their client to sign the documents and send them back to me. Send me a copy, because usually the agreement for sale, 3 copies, the transfer, 2 copies. So I'm waiting on the lawyer for the seller to send me back a copy of the signed agreement with the receipt for the deposit I have paid. I would have had a copy of the title already. They're also to send me evidence that the water and the taxes have been paid up to date. Note, I only say water and taxes. I'm not interested in the electricity and the telephone, because why am I not interested in those? Because the water and the taxes, those run with the land. Doesn't matter whose name they're paying, or they are tied to the land. So if they're not paid, they are going to be, the new owners are going to be obligated to pay them. If the light bill is not paid, that is really not a serious responsibility for me, because my client is going to take out their own contract. It is for the utility company to go and find the person who has not paid and get them to pay. So my obligation is really to ensure that taxes and water are paid up to date. You're listening to Land Matters on Called Out Gospel Radio. Okay, Land Matters is aired every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on Called Out Gospel Radio. My name is Gloria Brown. I'm an attorney from the firm Brown, Findlay and Company. The program, as I said, is aired every Tuesday at 7:30 and on Called Out Gospel Radio, and that radio station is located in Ocho Rios, St. Anne, Jamaica. And the aim of Called Out Gospel Radio is to impact the lives of persons positively. So it's not just Land Matters we're encouraging you to listen to. We're hoping that you will subscribe to the radio station throughout the day. And you may join via the radio stream or the app in the Google Play Store, or on the YouTube channel. And remember that these programs, Land Matters, that they can be accessed on the YouTube channel. Please remember to send your questions or your feedback to 876-387-3183 or 868-5109 or 876-535-8186, 876-535-8186 or 876-868-5109, and tell somebody about this because it is so important, okay, that we know what is happening. It's so important that we keep in touch with the realities around us so that we are in tune with what to do when we have serious decisions to make. Because when it comes to financial investment, land, house land, that's going to be the most expensive, one of the most expensive ventures that we're going to undertake in our lifetimes. I say one of the most because a lot of cars are more expensive than houses, than some houses. And some of us, the cars are so expensive that we can't buy the house. But land is one of the most expensive investments that we will make in our lifetime. So we don't want to make mistakes. So when the lawyer has provided me with the signed copy agreement for sale, a copy of the title which I would have got earlier on, a copy of the receipt to show that the deposit has been paid, evidence that water has been paid or a letter undertaken to pay the water, evidence that the taxes have been paid, then I will give my client all of those and say, go to your mortgage company. But I'm sorry, I missed a step earlier. Before my client signs the agreement for sale, I'm going to ask my client to do a valuation and a survey. My apologies. Those are crucial. Sometimes clients say, I don't want to do the valuation because I know it's worth it. If they are going to buy cash, fine. But as long as you're going to borrow money, you're going to get a mortgage. The mortgage company is going to insist that you do a valuation and a survey. For me, even when the clients say they're not going to do a valuation, I might not push. But if they say they're not going to do a survey, I usually push back because I have too many problems in my office where persons have breached. Okay, persons, when clients are buying and you say get a survey done, you realize there's a breach. The house is built too near to the boundary, or the house is encroaching, or the fence is encroaching on next door neighbor, or the next door neighbor is encroaching on this property that my client is buying. So we have a lot of problems with breaches because sometimes the persons we employ to do our developments, sometimes they don't have enough information. They miss where the pegs are. They miss how to read the plans. So the plan says that the house is not to be built less than 20 feet from the center of the main road. Okay, but the house is 15 feet from the center. So you have to apply to the court for the modification of that covenant. And the challenge is that a lot of times when you apply for the modification, you run into problems, especially if the clients did not get building permission. A lot of times we feel, oh, this is country, I don't need to get any permission, I just go into build. And then there's a breach. Or even though it's not country, it is town, it is St. Catherine, it is wherever. I say, oh, I'm going to take a chance and build. And then there's a breach. You try to amend the breach, and the first thing the parish council or the municipal corporation is going to say, where is the building approval? And if there's no building approval, then you have to call somebody in to draw the plan and apply to parish council. We call it as built. So you're going to get a plan to reflect the building as it has been built. We call it an as-built plan. Get that as-built plan to the parish council or the municipal corporation and get the corporation to sign off on the plan, and then we use that to apply to modify the covenant. But sometimes there's a breach. The building is too near, or sometimes the building is out in the road. The building is on a piece of the land that is supposed to be held for community purposes, or on an area that is a drain reservation. So a lot of times you see the municipal corporations pushing back and say, we're not going to approve it. Tell the client to cut off that part of the house. Can you imagine? Can you imagine you would have bought that house and paid for it and never pick up the breach, did not pick up the breach and not realize that there is a breach? And then you are told that you need to hit off a part of the house. So be very, very careful when you are buying. Make sure that that survey is done. make sure a survey is done when you're buying. Even when you say, I'm sure I live here forever and I know that that is the boundary. You might have known that as the boundary, but is it really the correct boundary? So the client is going to have, therefore, the client will have a valuation, a survey. And sometimes that's why I ask the clients to value before, because if you have signed the agreement for sale to say you're buying for 10 million and you go and do a valuation, it's valued at 5 million. You can't back out of it and say, hey, oh, you're selling me a $5 million house for 10 million. People are free to sell for whatever price they want. It's for you to determine whether or not you're going to buy it. So I always say to my clients, especially the valuation, get the valuation done before you sign. Because usually the agreement for sale makes provision where you have like 20 odd days to do the survey. And if there's a breach, then you can back out easily. But I prefer if my clients do the valuation and do the survey before signing. So what are you going to take to the bank with you now that you have got those documents? Your folder should include the valuation, the survey, the copy of the title, the signed agreement for sale, the water evidence that water has been paid, taxes have been paid, and the receipt to show that your deposit was made. You're going to take those to your lending institution along with evidence of your salary or your to show your earnings, whether you're self-employed or otherwise. You're going to go with to show evidence, because the mortgage company, the persons, the lender, the bank, the building society, housing trust, they want to be able to show that they want you to be to show that you'll be able to repay the loan. So they want evidence from you that you have been working at such and such a place for how many years, and this is your salary. So they might ask you to bring 3 or 4 or 5 or so of the last pay slips. So when you are going in when you're going into the lending institution, you're well armed. You have a lot of things with you. You have a folder or an envelope with a lot of things. Let me repeat them: the valuation, the survey, the agreement for sale signed by the buyer and the seller and you, the receipt to show you have paid the deposit, the copy of the title, the evidence that the water has been paid up and the light or undertaken from the lawyer that they will pay, as well as evidence of your employment, your last pay slips, etc. And you are going to go in with those. Note that most institutions will not lend you all the money you're buying the house for. They wanted to put some equity in it. So like housing trust might lend you 95% of the money, depending on what you qualify for. But usually you're asked to pay a deposit of 5 or 10%. And it is from the deposit that the government will be paid their stamp duty and transfer tax, because the person who is selling is not going to come up with any money out of pocket. All the expenses must come out of what you are buying for. So which is why you're asked to pay a deposit, because even if the institution is saying we're going to lend you 100%, before the mortgage comes through, the lawyers are going to need money to pay the government duties and to pay for what we call the agreement for sale. Because the agreement for sale, the cost of the agreement for sale is to be paid usually half and half by the sellers, half by the buyers. And that money is paid to the seller's lawyer. So even though I'm representing you as the buyer, you have to pay the seller's lawyer half of the price for preparing the agreement for sale, the agreement for sale. So a lot of times persons don't realize. So usually I say to my clients, if you're selling property, look to spend about 7%. If you're buying, look to spend about 5%. And I say 7% or 5% of the sale price, of the purchase price. And that can vary depending on how much you're buying for. Because a lot of us as lawyers will tell you that we don't go below a certain fee. So for example, even if you're buying it for $1, don't feel that you're going to pay 7% of $1. There are some minimum fees that lawyers don't usually go below. So know that you have gone to your mortgage company and the mortgage company is satisfied that everything is in order. And sometimes they're not satisfied. Sometimes they might say, oh, that house is an old house. We want you to get an engineer's report to show that it's structurally sound. And that can become a bit of a challenge as well. So when you're buying an older house, you might find that you have certain obligations, certain certain requests. And another thing you need to examine when you're buying in terms of the structure, you might have to get somebody who is, an expert to be able to ensure that you don't buy something and regret later. Because paint has covered a lot of flaws over the years. Paint. So when you see fresh paint, when you see fresh paint, be suspicious. When you see fresh paint, always be careful. Be careful. I remember a client telling me, that you should always use a broom. If it's one of those, if the house is of, if the house is, for example, if the house has a wooden roof, take a broom and stick it. That's what a client told me. Take a broom and stick the roof, because you might be surprised. You might be very, very surprised to see that the broom goes right through. So always check for termites, because we are, because of the type of climate we have. The challenges that we can have because of the type of environment. Termites will move in before the next tenant. Okay? Termites will move in very, very quickly before the next tenant. I have an aunt who told me that it's breath that keeps up your house. Okay, and I have found that that is so true. As soon as you move out, somebody was telling me about a lady who lived in a little house that was in such a bad condition, and she lived in there for years. And a month after she died, the house fell down. It's breath that really keep up the house. So you have to be very, very careful. Okay, when you're buying, make sure that you don't just jump to buy. Make sure you know that you have checked the interior, not because you see it looking beautiful. There's a story. I remember my pastor told me a story as a child about a man who bought a farm, and the farm was so beautifully done. There was a pump, and the pump was painted so shiny and new and pretty, and the animals on the farm just kept dying. And they realized that even though the pump was so beautiful, the water was poisoned. And it's something for life as well, that all that glitters is not gold. Don't just look at appearance. Don't judge people by their appearance. Don't judge your house by their appearance. Don't judge things by appearance. Get proper checks done. Look for the termite trail. Look what is happening. Do proper searches. Don't buy in a hurry. I say that to my overseas clients who feel they can come to Jamaica on the weekend, and they can just come to Jamaica on the weekend and buy a house. No, no, beware of something like that. Beware of those who are in a hurry to sell, because a lot of persons are selling riverbeds in dry time. So, listeners, that's what I want to say to you. I will continue next week because I haven't gone to the end of the sale. But I just wanted you to know a little bit about what happens, because these are times when a lot of persons looking to buy, a lot of persons looking to sell. And we went to the stage now where you have gone to your bank, and I will continue on that another time. I want to thank you again for continuing to listen to Land Matters on Call Gospel Radio. I want to thank JPS for continuing to sponsor the program. And thanks to the team. And I never leave a program without reminding my clients, please remember to make a will. I've been doing talks around, and I realize most Jamaicans don't have a will. I beg of you, please make your wills. Make sure that you don't leave a lot of problems afterwards with the generations to come, so we can rest in peace. Thank you so much, listeners. Look forward to sharing again with you next week on Land Matters. Have a good day.
Gloria Brown for Land Matters every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Jamaica time on Called Out Gospel Radio.